Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang. So welcome back to part 2 of my analysis with 23 dragons. So we left off at this part of the attack, right? So let's begin, right? So I mentioned how playing b6 was a little bit of a mistake on this part because I allow him to take, bishop takes, and occupy his knight on the square. So another thing is that after e takes f5, I realize, what if I play e4, right? Getting the bishop open. But however, you can play knight takes here. And after knight takes, right? Knight takes, this is not worth it. Because after queen takes, right? After bishop takes, queen takes, well, there's a deadly diagonal waiting for white. So I wouldn't do that. So let's move on then. So I played b6, and our chess club member said, you know what, let's chop it up. And that's the right decision. And I decide, here I have to think about two options. I have to think whether to take with this pawn or take with this pawn, right? And here's the reason I took with this pawn. The reason being is that I said bishop, knight, knight. So I compared it with this capture. And I thought, does the knight belong here or does it belong here? And I determined that it belonged here. So I captured that way. And now knight b3 is a little bit of a mistake. And just like I said before, e takes f5, bishop takes f5, occupy the knight on there. Complete advantage for white, especially because this is in a closed position. The knights are going to dominate over the bishops. Now you might hear this term, bishops are better than knights, right? But that refers to when it's an open position or when it's a closed position. Closed positions are exactly what they mean in English. It's closed. It's shut down. Look at this. It's like a lockdown. It's like white locked down himself, right? And then here you look at these pawns, right? You realize black has locked down, has locked down itself. So that's all part of it, right? So in this position, the knights would fare better. The reason is because bishops love diagonals, but they only like diagonals when they're open. So for example, this bishop hates this diagonal. The reason? It's not open. So by doing this, taking, the knight gets to cement itself on this square, and it's all good. White probably has a really good advantage over there. So I would say take, right? And after knight takes, black has all these ideas of knight here, knight here, knight here, and all that, right? Why not just chop it off? And after bishop takes, just cement it. This bishop is going to be bad forever. This bishop won't be so great either because he doesn't have a future really. So that's where I guess my opponent could have capitalized. But instead knight b3 came. And here I realized, you know what, this knight, I don't think it's doing anything. Here I realized, okay, I have to start my attack. So I played f4. I said, I am not going to give another chance to let white take my pawn, so I'm closing it down. h3. Now, I can easily just slow it down, so I played queen d6. First, what I did by queen d6 was I prevented all these ideas of, for example, sacrificing, right? d6, c takes d6, and for example, queen d2, rook d1, and all that, right? if we just look at queen, if white chooses to pile up on this file, it might be dangerous for me. So what I did, after h3, I just piled it up. I just closed it up completely. I said, I am not allowing you to do anything. So after queen e2, I slowly develop my pieces. There is no rush in this position. The reason being is that white can't do anything to break through. So what I'm doing is I am turtle crawling. I'm going very slowly to break through. So queen f2, rook f6. I am preparing my break very slowly. Knight b1. I wasn't exactly sure what the purpose of this move was, but I thought it was very interesting. I wasn't sure why. I just thought maybe, knight d2, rook here, knight f1, knight h2, something like that to maybe like defend against my advance. Or I thought, maybe rook, knight, 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 get the bishop here, defend the advance. That's all very advanced. I'm drawing arrows you might not be able to follow up, but I'll show it to you. So let's say after rook, rook, let's say I do nothing, knight, rook, knight, rook, knight, rook, bishop, and pawn, right? So now white has these two defenses and these two pawns, and I would only have this and this. So then I'd have to take a few extra moves to go rook, rook, bishop. So for example, it'd be something like this. It'd be something like this. King, 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 rook, rook, bishop, rook, rook, and then, I don't know, king b1, and rook, and then let's say rook, I'd go knight, rook, knight, rook, and now the push happens because I have more than enough pieces to attack the square. So I thought that was an interesting move, but in the game, I played h5, and our opponent just went all crazy. Knight takes a5. Obviously, this is a losing move because rook takes a5, but after knight d2, I thought this was very interesting. Our opponent wanted to open up the position at the cost of a knight. I thought that was bold, but it's very interesting. It proves that our chess club member has plenty of resistance in terms of wanting to win the game. So I play g4. Takes, takes, and I open it up. And then there's a5. So I thought to myself, I have to get out of there. I realized, you know what? If he takes here, no biggie. Bishop d1, I play queen d7. Now, I think the best move here is f3. I don't know why I didn't play it. Probably was just not thinking at the time. But another one of them was just even taking would have been interesting. Because here's the thing. You can notice that I am up a piece compared to white because white gave up that piece for the a5 pawn. Remember that? So even taking would have been easier. So after queen d7, a6, I decided to trade rook g6. And now once again, I don't know why, but I missed the idea of f3. Because after f3, g3, well, now this is good knight. Bam, Bam. So white doesn't get to do much here because my next move will be rook g6 and clamp down on white's position. Don't know why I didn't play it, but I probably was just being a little bit nice. So this didn't happen. I played rook g6 instead. I took my time. So here, a good move would have been knight d2 to stop f3, now that we know. Queen e2, also fine, because after f3, rook takes f3. Perfect. I played knight c8. I was probably a little too worried about this pawn. Rook a1, I played knight d6. Remember my earlier idea of whether I thought my knight was here or my knight was here, which one was better? Well, in this case, the knight being here would have been better, because now the knight can go back and protect against the pawn. But I didn't know that at that time. So that's that. After a7, played rook a6, and after rook g3, knight d2, knight c8. I'm going for the pawn. Rook a1, queen g4. I thought, you know what? It's time to trade. Queen takes, rook takes, knight b3. And here's where I thought, okay, I'm definitely winning. I don't know why I didn't play f3. I thought about it for sure, but I just didn't play it. I don't know why. So there were a lot of mistakes on my part. So instead, what happened was I played rook g3, and I allowed knight takes c5. And this is a powerful move. I'll show you why. Pawn takes, rook c6. And you might think, okay, now I can take this pawn, right? Yes, true. But after rook takes c7, look at all these two deadly pawns that I have allowed. Right, so takes, I play bishop f8. I play it to get to this square and defend this pawn. So after b6, play rook b3, b7, and here I play rook b4. Now, one thing I could do is play c4. Probably good, because after c4, rook takes, I'd still be winning there, but I'd have to take some time to convert it. Right, so after c4, right, you might think, okay, the king gets there in time. But then I play c3. And after king e2, well, bishop d6, guarding the square, threatening the rook. So after rook c6, the rook might be threatening the bishop, but then you distract it. Because after here, king d2, this is the critical move. c1 check, because after check, bishop a3, king c2, rook takes b7. And now the threat of this pawn is gone. Working with these two pawns should be fine for me. But okay, I somehow didn't see that. I was still sort of kind of a little bit angered that I didn't convert the position earlier up a knight. So bishop d6, rook d7, bishop f8. I'm looking a little bit powerless now. Now, I cannot take this because you queen, right? So it's a really complicated position. And once again, I will save this position for a part 3 of this video. So thank you.